Do it.
Our next guest on the Any Given Monday podcast has gone from representing Ireland on a European stage in cross country to dominating the world stage in Ironman 70.3 with multiple AG wins, including the European Championships in Estonia in 2023 and the World Championships in New Zealand in 2024. Becky Woods, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. How are you getting on?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Big fan. Listen to most of the episodes on my long journeys home from work. So weird to be on this side for once.
You know what? We find it weird when athletes are actually starting to listen to us. There's something so wrong about that me and Sean can't quite get our heads around. But we're glad that you listen. We get that kind of starstruck feeling because it doesn't make sense to us, but we must be doing something right. But Becky, it is so good to have you on. When we get so many accomplished people, what we love to know, and it always start the podcast with, how did you get involved in sport and where did your journey start?
I think like most of the people you've had on, great parents that threw me into every single sport when I was a kid. There was five of us in my family, all under the age of 5. So really, really close together. So the easiest thing I think was for my parents to first throw us all into a swimming pool to make sure we were safe and able to swim. So that was my first ever sport. And then did a little bit of gymnastics on the side. My dad was a big table tennis and tennis table player. So we got into racket sports. Goodness me, then I found I was at a camp, like a drama camp, totally not of my street, but we would have done anything when we were under the age of 10. And I saw a group of people playing basketball at a basketball camp. And I was like, oh man, why am I at a drama camp when I could be at a basketball camp? So then my love for basketball grew from the age of 10 and continued that for a long time. Took up running in secondary school. I think anything I could dip my hands into, I wanted to do. I definitely was. I think I've got a twin sister and we were just the most overactive kids. And I'd say kids, but it actually transcended into our adulthood. And I think people still comment on how much energy we have. But I know my parents just gave us every opportunity in the world to do what we wanted when we were kids. And I think now they're like, when are you going to retire, Becky? You're 36 and you're still doing this. And so I blame them. I'm like, you guys started this off.
How so did you go from, like, at that age you get thrown at all these different sports, and you mentioned basketball. I like, you say that as if I just played a bit of basketball, but you played at a pretty high level of basketball. So how did it go from, like, how high did you get up, and then how did it go from, you know what, basketball isn't the main passion, it's now running? How did that switch happen for you?
It's funny. I suppose when I was a swimmer, we were so young when we started competitive swimming. Like I think I would have done my first gala at 7 or 8, and I didn't know how to train. So I never fell in love with the sport of swimming. So any opportunity to skip swimming or to avoid it, I took that route. And basketball came into the fore. And so I would have started basketball when I was 12. And every summer went to, summers lasted about 3 months when you're in primary school, secondary school. So I think I did basketball camps for about 3 months every single week. And within every week, there was always competitions that you could play. And then there was trophies at the end of the week. I think having a twin sister, we were just so competitive with each other and we wanted to clean up. So like instead of when we finished basketball camp, we were supposed to go swimming training in the evening, but I'd always have an excuse. I'd be like, oh, I got hit in the head, someone with a basketball. Like I can't go swimming tonight. And you'd find me in the garden for 3 hours, practicing whatever skill or whatever shot we had for the competition the next day. So I think I got good pretty fast. And having a twin sister, we could always play one of the back gardens together. And we just lived and breathed for the sport in that first year. And we started secondary school. I had the most incredible basketball coach. And it just so happened we had the most incredible team. And for the 6 years of secondary school, we never lost a match. We won every cup final, every league final, fighting again to get the MVP award. Once again, anything I could win, I wanted to win in that game. And then the Irish team. So you kind of got scouted when you're on that kind of level to come to the basketball team, to come to the Irish basketball team. And I remember we would have traveled the world trying to make that under 16 basketball team. That's the first team you can make. And I made it down to the last 14 on the panel. And we were in Spain at a kind of international competition with my school team. And we got the phone call to say if you'd made the team or not. And because we were underage, our mum had to deliver the news. And I remember our mum sitting just myself and my twin down, and she was like, oh shit, how am I gonna say this to the girls? Anyway, my twin made the team. She was a shooting guard. and I didn't make the team. I was a point guard, and there was already there was 3 of us fighting for those 2 positions. And like, I wasn't like upset. I was actually kind of like, are you for real? Like, I should have made that team. But I suppose my problem was I was just tiny. And when you get to the international level, like, those girls would be twice the size if I was. But me being me, that summer, once again, I went to every single camp I could go to just to get my hands on a basketball. And that following year, I had the best year of my life playing basketball, because I was just so, I don't know if I can use this word in your podcast, but pissed that I wasn't selected. And then I had the most amazing year. But then I actually got scouted for the under-18 basketball team. And when I decided to kind of hang up the boots after that for the under-20 basketball team, they rang me again and asked me any chance you'd play. And I was like, oh, I really want to go down the running route. And it's really hard. When I was a basketball player, I was the point guard, so I could be a bit smaller, but I was really small. Like, I was trying to, at that level, at that age, I was trying to juggle running with basketball. One, you want to put on weight and a lot of muscle. And then the other one, I was like the long distance cross country runner, and you want to be the opposite. So I was a little bit torn, but what a great sport. Like, the camaraderie and all those teams, all the trips abroad, saw the world. Well, I saw a lot of basketball halls across the world, which was absolutely amazing. But it got to the stage where I'd go to these, like, I'd be a really good player. I'd get to whatever country it was we were playing, and it was like the coaches didn't have enough trust, because I was quite small, that I could, like, do my job on the court. And I just was like, gosh, am I better trying to see where I can get on the running scene, where it's all me, whatever training I put into it, I can bring to whatever race course it is. And it's on me. It's on me if I don't do well. It's on me if I do well. Whereas in basketball, you're so reliant on your team and the coaches to put you on that court. And I got a little bit frustrated with that, I think, as time went on. And yeah, I suppose I just wanted more control over my destiny. And I hung up the basketball boots, I think when I was 22 or 23. Went back to play a couple of cup games, got a national cup medal. I called in for a final, so that was cool. I was like, that was worth it. And then I guess after that, I lost a little bit of skill, so it wasn't called back. So then went straight into, I just threw myself into the running scene and tried to see how far I could get with that.
Why running? What was so, like, everyone probably knows this fact now with Netflix, that Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team and came back, and obviously he did all right in basketball. So that sounded like a little bit of you at the start. And like you say, did you know that? Were you looking back now at this and saying, okay, I was definitely too small? Or at the time, did you know you were a bit too small? And then was there a race during this that you went, I'm jumping into running? Because you still had the swimming and all in the background. You said like you fell out of love with that. So was there just something, was there a race the time you did and you're like, actually, I could stand out in this running sport. Forget about the team stuff in basketball. This is my area.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I was running on, I suppose just went to a great secondary school, and like the basketball coach, we had the most amazing running coach, Enda Fitzpatrick. He ended up being a kind of the running coach in DCU, and got a lot of trophies and medals through his years there. And so, yeah, he was fantastic. And like the basketball, we won a lot of the running across the years. You only needed 3 people on a team in secondary school. So that was, I'd me and my twin, we just needed one other person to help us out. And so we had a great team. And so I would have once again tried out. Once again, I would have tried out for the under 20s Irish team to get to the European cross country. And I'd missed it a couple of times. There were 6 people that got through. And I was always 7th or 8th. And that annoyed me a little bit, but I was okay, because basketball was still my first love. And then I got to the under 23 level, and it was my first year at that level. And that's when I decided, God, I've done what I've done in basketball. And the next step, I suppose, is to get your first cap as a senior, or I could try to get my first proper cap on the European cross country stage. And I just knew trying to juggle the 2 sports was going to be impossible, because I need to get more miles in, focus on the recovery. There's no point training hard if you can't recover. So I completely switched tact, and I just said, I'm going to make this under 23 Irish cross country team. And thankfully, it worked out in the end. Made it. Didn't do absolutely phenomenal or anything when I was over there representing Ireland. But I think for the first time, it's, can I make it? Am I good enough to make this team? And so that was pretty sweet. Once again, I had the time of my life putting on that Irish singlet in a different sport. And having done that and having done okay, didn't have much expectations. I was like, I gotta get back here. This is unbelievable. So then, yeah, I was pretty sure then I suited that sport better than basketball. And I knew basketball was always there. I was still young and I could always go back if I wanted to.
Becky, a lot of athletes who come on, they talk about identity when they're growing up because they're so heavily involved in sport. Some people get into triathlon early and they feel like triathlon is everything, and they make it to university, and sports sometimes, in the cruelty that it is, can make or break, and people kind of lose that sense of themselves. Was it scary to go from such successes in basketball and have a twin that's slightly better than you to then go into running and kind of finding
It was a
new
different position there. It
identity?
wasn't better. It was a different position. She
that.
never said that. Careful now, son.
Just to I'm going to clarify before you finish that sentence. She was a shooting guard and she was a better shooter.
I'm on your
But I was
sister's
a
side.
point guard and I have more skill. That's how I weigh it up. She had like half. She was 6'6.5", and I was 5'6". No, she was 5'6.5", and I was 5'6".
I was like,
6'6.5".
twins, the whole
No wonder why she was
difference.
bigger. And that's
are
exactly why
identical.
I'm her friend. 6'6". No, but so being the lesser twin, your sister's gonna love me for this one, but being the lesser twin and then moving into that identity thing, was that scary, or were you just so involved in so many sports growing up that didn't really make a difference? You knew you had the background from, because anyone who's played basketball knows end-to-end court is probably some of the hardest sport in the world. Like basketball for me physically was a very difficult one in school. I was never more tired than after a basketball game than and most other field sports or anything else I did. What was it like then, taking that into running and trying to establish a new identity, as a lot of athletes have said in the younger years, it becomes part of you?
I think always in the back of my head was, gosh, was this a good decision to give up basketball? But I always did running alongside basketball. So I was always a dual athlete growing up. So I had some successes in running at national level, whether it was cross country or track anyway, but it was all at juvenile level. And they always say, like, I remember one of my coaches always said, it doesn't matter what you do when you're a junior. So basically what he was saying was, like, study hard, don't overtrain, eat well, don't get injured. And so basically what he's saying was, it matters when you're a senior. And it was tough jumping from the junior ranks to the senior ranks in running. And it was also tough doing the sport as just one sport. And it was the first time ever that I actually picked up an injury, because all of a sudden I had all this free time. And what do you want to do when you're that age with all that free time? I was throwing in extra runs here, there, and everywhere. And it's funny, it didn't actually make me a better athlete in the end. It made me an injured athlete in the end. And I suppose that was, now I still had some lovely, lovely times, lovely successes. And I suppose at that point when I got my first injury, I was like, gosh, what do I really want to do? And I was definitely made to be a long distance runner, but I just loved the track. So I got to the stage where I decided to change coach, actually rang up the coach of a different club team altogether than I was affiliated with. He was happy to take me on to his track team. And so for 3 years, I trained on the track. And I suppose when you're on the track, it's more so about chasing PBs. Medals are great, but you're doing it for you. And I was trying to see like how fast I could run an 800 in, how fast I could run the 1500 in. And they were probably, even though I didn't win as much at that level, and I was changing my identity from being a long distance runner to a track runner, it was the first time I realized I'm now doing sport because I absolutely love it. I'm not doing because someone wants me to win or there's an expectation on me to win. I realized, gosh,
or your sister is better.
Well, she actually started track running too. It was the first time I was just so excited to compete on the track. I was so excited to race, whether I was going to win or not, it didn't matter. That didn't bother me. And I suppose at the same time, I was also doing a really challenging college course. So it kind of, you didn't have enough time to think, God, am I good at this sport? Should I go back to basketball? I was trying to juggle a full-time college course as well as trying to do 20 hours of training a week, I guess, you know?
How did you balance that? I couldn't even do one of them, let alone the other one. I was back in college. I blame Eric being a bad influence, but apart from that, like, how did you get the 20 hours of that and trying to balance your studies and everything else? Like, how did that work?
Do you know what? I think it was always innate from a young age, because once I stepped foot into secondary school, similar to wanting to win every race or every basketball competition I entered, I wanted to get top marks in my class as well. So I think by the time I got to college, I was only doing one sport. So to me, I was like, this much must be really easy. And you know what? Actually, I do look back, and I look back at the guys doing triathlon in college, and I don't know how they do that. I think doing one sport is extremely manageable. Like, I was in college 9 to 5, so you did your run beforehand, got home from college, did your training. I suppose I probably did a lot of my major study or major kind of project or research work at the weekends when other people were probably out having a good time. But that was cool with me. I was like, I was in my element. You know, I was at my desk, feet up on the bed, rest. To me, I was like, this is my recovery from running, and no better recovery. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I didn't have that, I'd be off gallivanting, doing whatnot, you know?
Did sport and getting into the with the competitive family, did that help you mature faster for this? Because I wish I had a head like that when I was in my early 20s. Also, the skill and the athleticism and all the rest that goes with it. But like, I look back and I'm like, I was an idiot. One, my secondary school, none of these coaches went to any secondary school I went to. I tell you that much. My gym PE classes were up to the gate and back, and that took 45 minutes, even though it was only 100 meters down the road. And then you just played with a football like nothing. I'm like, where is this school? It's unbelievable.
We were spending about 20 hours a week drinking, Sean.
Yeah, when she says shots, she means basketball shots. Russell's at the bar.
Oh, yeah. It was a three-pointer on a Monday. Becky, it's phenomenal to have that. Like, I'd say, as a parent, your parents are looking at you going, there's something wrong with her. She really wants to study and do well. You're a parent's dream. But to echo Sean's question, where did that maturity come from, or was it just the love of sport?
I think having five of us, 5 siblings that were so close in age. Like, I had a brother that was 2 years ahead of me, a sister that was 4 years ahead of me, and a brother that was 2 years behind me in school. And my two brothers actually played rugby at a really high level, and one of them went to play professionally, actually, the younger brother. And I think it was just, this is what we did. I saw my brothers and sisters do it, and I was like, okay, I better do the same. This is how we roll. I think we weren't the norm, but we didn't know that at the time. So this is what I lived and breathed when I came home from school. Yeah, I think it's when you see it, you do. What's that quote again? I'm trying to think about it. The quote for women in sport: if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I was seeing it every single day. But which, you know what was so funny? My twin sister had said to me a while back, she was like, I would see you.
The better sister, get her name right.
I'll give her a name, Sarah. She's gonna love this. She's not a podcast person, so I think that bodes well for me. But I remember she said to me a while back, I would see, we shared a bedroom, and she was like, I would see you up in the bedroom studying, and she'd be like, oh crap, now I have to go up and study too. Because once again, she was like, she's not gonna do better than me. So yeah, you know what? It was the norm in our house. We were trying to finish our homework or study as quick as possible for our poor parents to bring us to whatever sport we were doing that evening, you know? And they were amazing. Then they'd have the dinner ready for you. I pretend to my fiance that I can't cook, but I actually don't think I can cook, because my parents took care of everything, you know? He even changed the bed sheets, because I never did that growing up. I think I was spoiled. Like, they gave us every opportunity to, I think because we were doing well in school, they were so supportive. They were like, if you do well in school, we will get behind you 100% in sport. And it's just, this is the way it was.
If it was a competition to change those bed sheets, or if you're on one of those baking shows, I reckon you somehow managed to get competitive and win that thing from absolutely nothing as well.
Well, actually, that probably came in
Parents
with
missed
the
a trick there. But to be fair, like, people talk about spoiled, where like you were getting your hardship, your discipline, your everything from sport. And I suppose as parents, or maybe parents, I'm not one myself yet, but as parents listening, it's in terms of the education and the toughness and the discipline. Like, when you're performing at that level at junior ages, and really staying dedicated and having consistency, and education's going well, if all you have to do is, okay, I'll make the bed and I'll make sure they're fed, you know, like it's a very small price to pay for kids you can see progressing in their careers. And I think sport is great for every kind of development, social development, personal development. And obviously you guys were doing that in buckets and spades. So I don't know, one person's that's not right is another person's that's not spoiled at all. That's phenomenal foundations for the future.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get my parents to listen to what you just said there, Eric.
Just that bit though, nothing else. Just that little segment. The podcast is only 20 seconds long, really. That was it.
But you know what? I even see it with my twin has 2 kids. So she's the only parent out of my siblings so far. And she's even like asking us, what sport should I get Quinn into? What sport should I get? She's got a boy and a girl. What sport would I get Freddie into? So her mindset is already going to, and she keeps saying to us, look, it doesn't matter if they're not the best, it doesn't matter. And we're like, yeah, right. But no, it's true. She just wants to, I think she saw I suppose the friends group, the kind of the pathway it put us on growing up. And so from the age of, her kids are 4 and 2, she's already like to my brothers, so as a man, what sport do you think Freddie should play, you know, so he gets on the right pathway growing up? And I think my parents just did that, you know. They still cook for us every Sunday night, and the other 4 aren't playing sport anymore.
Becky, what's your answer to that for a young parent? Because you could look back and go, obviously you had basketball and stuff, but you'd also look at it and go, maybe you got your hand-eye coordination from the table tennis and stuff you did, and you threw into gymnastics, and that had to help with the running. Would you throw, hypothetically, a kid into all sorts of sports and let it figure it out? Do you think some sports you need to have that discipline in? What would your approach be to that?
Yeah, I think that what I reflect on with my parents is there was never any pressure whatsoever. They actually had to sit us down at, I think we were 11 or 12, and say to us, you're doing a lot.
Yeah, narrow it down, will you? For fuck's sake.
Is there anything
How many miles a week in the car just to travel all 5 years from different place to place? Gotta pick Becky up at this time, but Sarah's down the road
in
here.
The car, Sean, it was a minibus.
Oh man, they were amazing. But like I do think having kind of my foot in all those sports with absolutely no pressure whatsoever. The only pressure was to be in the car at the right time so that we weren't late for the sport. My dad is never late for anything. So that was the only thing. But I do think dipping your feet into every sport definitely gives you kind of that more holistic picture, so that when you're older and when it matters, that you have all the skill set, but you also have the strength. You've got the fast feet, but you've also got the plyometric power to be able to really go far in a chosen sport. And they gave us that opportunity.
You mentioned there before Eric went on a tangent about who's better who and all the rest. You had an injury with the running. I'm assuming this is where the cycling came in because you need to do something.
Spot on. Kind of in a backwards way though there, Sean. I fractured my navicular bone, and it just took so long for it to heal. It's near the body where very little blood goes. And so I actually put back on the togs, and I hadn't swam since a training camp I went to in Lanzarote when I was 13 or 14. And I decided I was going to go on the training camp, have the time of my life, spent the whole time on the basketball court or the running track, and never went back to swimming after that. So it was a long hiatus, about 14 years. And I was like, I wonder where these swimming togs are. So anyway, I had to buy a new pair. The other ones didn't fit. And I had a buddy actually who was a running friend. And I was in a boot and crutches at the time. And she collected me every single morning. She was a runner, injured as well. We both went to DCU pool, swam. Because we were both swimmers back in the day, we knew how to swim. We knew what sets to do. And it got to the stage where I had to go back to work. So the boot was off. I was out of the crutches. I was back in work, and I couldn't train in DCU anymore because I was working over the south side. So she was in a similar boat, and she decided to take out a membership in UCD. And I got a call from her one day, and she was like, Becky, there is the most awesome swim group in UCD. They just asked me, did I want to join? And I was like, no way, do you think I could join? And she's like, for sure. So rocked up to UCD with this most eclectic group of swimmers. You have people that were national level pool swimmers to long distance open water swimmers that have done the channel. two triathletes. And I was just an injured runner at this stage. So threw myself in there. They met every single morning at 6 a.m. That worked for me. It helped me skip the traffic from traveling from the north side of Dublin to the south side of Dublin. And in time, they were like, "What are you training for, Becky?" And I was like, "I don't really know." And one of them persuaded me to come on a cycle with her. And I just bought a bike because I did this charity cycle to Galway. The Galway cycle, they had raised a lot of money for my work National Rehab Hospital. So bought a bike for that. And I did that. And you forget that you're in this massive big group of people. So I thought it was great finishing this 200k cycle, but you're drafting the whole way. There's not a bit of wind. Anyway, my buddy said to me, she's an Ironman athlete. She was like, "Becky, the first triathlon of the season is on. It's in Carlo. Do you want to spin up with me?" And I was like on the bike. And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, how long is it?" And she was like, 100k. And in my eyes, 100k might take an hour. I had no concept of time. I didn't have cleats. I didn't have a pair of bike shorts or anything. I was like, "For sure, let's do this." And so I met her, didn't have any fuel, had nothing, got to about, I'd say 80k. And I was like, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna have to get a taxi." And she's like, "Bex, there is no taxis. Come on, we gotta go." And I was like, "You're gonna miss the start of the race." Anyway, she dragged me there. And I didn't realize I really hate being bad at something. And so I was like to her, "Will you, next time you're going out, would you let me know?" And I just got hooked, not from seeing the triathlon. Funny enough, I didn't get hooked on the triathlon scene. I got hooked on actually just getting better at a sport I felt pretty bad at. And there was 4 of us then, a group of us, once again, swimmers from UCD. We'd meet, instead of meeting for swimming every morning at 6 a.m., we met at 6 a.m. to get, you had to rate, there was 4 watt bikes in UCD. And we were there at 5:50 a.m. racing up to use the watt bikes. And I just got good. I got good pretty quickly because I was consistent and had the other 3 making up all these sessions, whether it was aerobic, threshold, VO2 max, had no clue what I was doing at the time, but absolutely loved it. And it was a good timing because I had a whole year then, watched the triathlon races that summer, got better on the bike all through the rest of the year, kept swimming, got back to a little bit of running and decided, gosh, I may as well see what all the crack is about with this triathlon. I had been swimming loads, biking loads. My run was fine. It wasn't incredible or anything like that at that stage. And so entered my first triathlon, super stoked, had no clue about transitions or anything like that. And ended up winning it. And I was like, "Oh, okay." The training paid off. This is pretty fun. Now, it was a sprint distance. And don't ask me who was in the race. It could have been a really low level race. But I just was like, "Oh, I got my taste back for winning, being competitive." I had the time of my life. I was like, "Cool, when's the next one?" So I just threw myself into the triathlon scene. I suppose I started the sport wanting to be definitely a recreational athlete. I'd done all the other sports at a high level and I just wanted to do something for fun. But I got the taste for what it was like to do something then, to do something at a good level, and it just took off from there. And the Triathlon Ireland have a great national series kind of season whereby you can race every weekend if you wanted to. And I had no coach telling me not to race every weekend, so I just raced every single weekend. And I had great crack. And from there, you couldn't hold me back. I decided to get a coach the year after that to be a little more serious. And then COVID hit, I guess. And that gave me an opportunity to really throw it down on the bike. It was the only thing that you could really do to keep your sanity, And that's where the long distance triathlon came in after that. And that's my story.
Becky, just for a bit of context for Aircast's question there, 2019 was your first triathlon race?
2018.
2020. Eric, go ahead.
Sean has the abacus out there, just steam coming out of the beard.
I can see him with his pen and paper.
I'm looking at the list
2
here.
years together, and he's unbelievable. Becky, I want to just talk about the COVID-19 era of triathletes, because we ended up, and I was one of them, a Wahoo kicker arrived, and I was like, yes, this is amazing, the best station that has ever existed. Anytime it rained, I was in there 4 or 5 hours having a great time. What was it for you in terms of, I suppose, COVID put a lot of the athletes out, depending on their sport, in the team element, they couldn't play, and the this element, they couldn't get, skills were lost. But in terms of cycling, running, and possibly some open water swimming, if you could brave it, How did that fare for you in that COVID? Because obviously you've come from this high of finding a new sport to, oh, what's going to happen now? How did you manage that, and how do you find indoor training?
I suppose I work in a hospital, so I was still working all throughout all throughout COVID, when it was really intense to when it settled out. And so I needed a release when I got home from the crazy work environment. And thankfully my flat a girl that was living with me at the time had wasn't it what was a Neotax, really, really cool,
Yeah.
smart trainer. And I just took the opportunity. I knew that I had 0 years background on the bike. Like I'd enough swimming. My whole life I've been running, but I had 0 years background. So I actually just changed my mindset and thought, I've got a couple of months. You'd think it was months at the time. I decided a couple of months to really build up my power on the bike. I was that type of athlete that my cadence was so high, I would spin it out. And I really had to learn to build the skinniest twig legs. And I just decided, let's get some power, let's get some muscle on these legs. And every night I came home from work, I joined Swift at the time. I'd either be racing, meeting my buddies, or just doing some kind of interval session. And yeah, not a fan of the open water and not a fan of the cold. I had never done enough indoor, I never actually trained in my apartment at the time. We'd always use the turbo trainers in my coaching setup, and we'd train it in base race with my hook up team. So it was the first, so to me, actually, it was quite a novelty. It had never been done before. And it wasn't that I fell in love with indoor training whatsoever. I fell in love with getting good, and I could see my power increase. First time I started doing those 20-minute tests, and you could see the progress going on. And then the other thing was, I got to cycle to work, and I work over the south side. So I still got the benefit of the
easy
fresh
ride
air.
as such. Yeah,
Yeah, an
the
easy
easy
ride.
cycle.
Easy
Yeah,
cycle where there were so many checkpoints, and I'd be like, oh, stop stopping me.
yeah.
And I also had a Phoenix Park on my doorstep. It's within my 5K radius. So I just spent hours. I have never been back to that park for a bike ride, because I lived in there on the bike, trying to get better with my technical skills on the bike, because I was getting under that practice being stuck in the turbo. I'm pointing here because I'm literally sitting right in front of my turbo.
Yeah, the famous 9 kilometer loop of the park that
Oh
you just
man,
keep
never.
doing again and
I've never
again.
done it again. Get PTSD going back there, but look, it was all worth it in the end, because it was after COVID actually. I suppose we were weaning out of COVID. There was still no real races happening, and my coach said to me, "Would you go down to Bantry for the Hardman?" And I was like, "That's a 70.3." And he's like, "Yeah, you'd be well up for it." And in my head, I was like, "No friggin' way am I doing that." I just couldn't think of anything worse than a 1.9K swim in the open water. It wasn't the other things that put me off. And that evening, I met my buddy who loved Hilary Hughes. She was well into the long distance scene at that stage, and went out to Sea Point, I think we ended up doing 2.5K. And I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So I texted him back that evening, and I was like, sweet, yeah, let's do this. He had no clue about what was going on in my head up to that point. All he saw was the text going, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And I did that race, and that's when I could really see the bike paid off. So all the work in the bike, it was the hilliest. Bantry's known as the hilliest course you'll ever do. And I actually came off the bike going, that was okay. Absolutely love that. Now, it went way too hard, had nothing left for the run, but I just had the best time in the bike ever.
And a lot of lessons learned, obviously, when you take on courses like that, and you learn obviously racing was very new to you. You'd done probably a season, and then there was still a lot of racing and competitive learning you still had to do at this stage as we wean out of COVID. And I suppose you're 2 years older as well, which doesn't help.
Way to rub it in there, Eric.
No, but it's in terms of athletic career, like 2 years where you can't really do anything it's a lot. It's a lot of experience. It's a lot. 2 years.
You're spot on. I suppose I didn't see it like that. To me, it was 2 years of massive experience I got, because I think if I had to throw myself, I think if I didn't get that experience during COVID of no racing and just throwing down the training, I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to throw myself into a long distance race. So that did me an awful lot of good, I think, and definitely set me up for this long distance career where I always knew I'm a long distance athlete, but I like the short, fast stuff where your lungs are burning, you feel that metal at the back of your throat, but it definitely wasn't probably what I was made for, you know.
Becky, just to clarify, the 2021 Hardman, your very first ever 70.3. Normally people ask, did you finish it? Congratulations, well done. How'd you get on that race? just to set up where we're going with this. I think people listening probably know how you got on that race, but just to say it.
I won that one.
Of course you did, Becky. Of course you did. And that's it. Like, obviously your career, you went straight on from there. Marbella then the following year for your first Ironman. So your first time hearing we've talked before, Eric did one in Portugal and I was there at the start line. Not start line, sorry. I was there a good kilometre before the start line, so I'd never get to start line with my lack of swimming. But hearing the buzz of the announcers and everything else that goes with it and the production goes behind Ironman, how was that in Marbella?
Honestly, the most incredible experience of my life. To this day, we still go back to Marbella every year. Every April, we go back for a little holiday because, like, the Ironman was great, but I suppose you wouldn't have the level of competition and the atmosphere isn't as crazy and overwhelming as an Ironman. Yeah, it was. Well, I suppose I absolutely loved that race because, once again, it was what I trained for. It was the hilliest bike course you're probably going to get, I think, on the Ironman scene. Straight into a flat run by the ocean. It was just absolutely incredible. It was the first time I traveled with my now fiance, and to have someone there that is so supportive. I think he was more excited than I was. He was learning how to call the splits, let me know how I was doing. Yeah, it was unreal. I was just so stoked for it. I didn't have any expectation of how I'd do. I knew I'd love to try to get a world qualification because I was in Utah that year. And I had a couple of buddies that had already qualified. And I was like, that would be insane to get to go to the States and get to race over there. So no expectation, but in the back of my head, I was like, I really want to win. But I didn't know.
No expectations, but losing is not accepted in this house.
But I really had absolutely no clue if that was a possibility whatsoever. Anyway, I came off the bike. I think I was sixth or seventh going onto the bike. Came off the bike and I was second, I think. And there was one girl ahead of me. And so I went on the hunt and passed her. I couldn't believe it. My partner was saying to me, "You're coming first." And I was like, "In my age group or overall?" And he was like, "Come first overall." And I was like, "This is bloody awesome." So yeah, I have to admit, I was very chilled about it. Just, I had said to myself, if I was starting another sport at a high level, I was only going to race if I wanted to. I wasn't going to be pressured into anything. And if I was really excited about it. And that's exactly how I went into that race. So to get the win was a total bonus. Winning then qualified me for the Worlds. And then I suppose I was like, gosh, like this, I better get a bit more serious about it. Better get a bit more race specific. I still have the same coach to this day. Sure, he's been through it all himself. He was absolutely amazing. And probably the time from that race to when I got to that was May to get to October to Utah. The training was so intense. And I realized that was probably my favorite time of the year. I just love when the training ramps up. I'm so focused. I've something like I kind of knew how I wanted to do in that race. Having won one race, that look, you're not going to get every triathlete at those smaller races, but I had an idea. God, I'd love to get like top 10 if I'm making this journey the whole way over to Utah, So yeah, it was just put me into a training environment where I get to train full time. I was working. So when you're working, there's less study happening. So it's almost easier. Your weekends are made for training. I actually decided at that stage I decided to work 4 long days in work, and my work crew they were the most helpful people in the world. So I was able to take off Wednesdays to give myself like another weekend day. And yeah, it set me up really nicely actually for heading to my first World Champs.
terms of hours, Becky, what are we talking about in a training week? Like, I shudder to think what ramped up training means to you. Like, what are we?
You should have seen
Rough
our
hours.
ramped up drinking weeks, Becky.
12 o'clock in the SU once a week because I couldn't handle twice.
Do you know what? I honestly, I wouldn't have had training hours or anything like that in my head back in 2022. I know for 2024 training for the World Champs, it would have been between 20 and 25 hours, kind of when it came to the last 12 weeks, do you know?
Right.
But that doesn't, like, some weeks were absolutely less. And those weeks may have been way, way tougher actually than the longer hour weeks, because that they were the intensity weeks. So instead of just doing a long, 90-minute run, it might have been a 60-minute run, but the last 5K were race pace,
No.
and then then it might have been another 1K, a faster than race pace. So yeah, so I always think it's less about the hours and actually more about the quality that you're doing. But I suppose now that I'm 2 years beyond Utah, I was able to ramp up the hours and the intensity, but no clue what kind of training I was doing for Utah. I just know it was intense for me because I was quite inexperienced at that time.
Sure, Utah World Champ. You probably didn't even get anywhere near your top 10 goal for something like that, Becky, right?
I got close enough.
I have in my notes second AG and fourth overall for your first World Championships, and that is a little over a year after doing Hardman. That's a phenomenal. I know you had the 2-3 years before that building into it, but then to jump, I mean, you must be thinking at that stage, how far can I really take this?
Yeah, I suppose at that stage, I'm definitely an athlete that lives in the moment, and I don't really think beyond where I'm at then and there. And it was just amazing. And the reason why that, like, I suppose people were like, you could, like, were you close to first? And I was like, whoa, let's not go there. Like, I was so happy being second, but I was even more happy because the girls that were third and fourth, so third place was 0.4 behind me, and fourth place was 0.04. And with the rolling starts, yourself, it's not a sprint finish. You're relying on people saying to you, sprint, don't stop, don't celebrate, leave the flags, So I had a great career over there that told me, just with about 40 meters to go, they were like, you have to send this, like, do not stop. If it wasn't for them, I probably could have got fourth, because I mean, there was a blink of an eye between us all. So that was just unreal for my first Ironman. And after that, then once the season was over, that was the end of the season, then I got thinking, gosh, I wonder if I could win one year. Like, I wonder if I could win the following year. But I was in a different age group then. So that was my last year from 30 to 34. So the following year, 2023, I'd be in the 35 to 39-year-old category. And I always think with this sport, people always think, like, you would probably have your toughest competition in the younger age groups. But sure, that's not the case with long distance sport at all. The older you get, you're certainly still in contention for winning the whole thing. So I didn't have a clue now what I was getting myself in for, but I knew I wanted to qualify for the 2023 one, and it was in Europe. It was in Finland, so a pretty easy travel in comparison to the last one, So went all guns blazing, really focused for the following year. Got my qualification. Oh, actually, that year I hurt my Achilles, actually. So from February till June, I did zero running. And when I say zero, I mean zero running, except for when I tested the Achilles to see if I could run again. So I got to up my mileage.
You'd break the Achilles again just to see if it was still broken.
like once again, being a multi-sport athlete, it's really, really cool because I didn't get too upset about it. I was like, okay, time to be a really good biker and a really good swimmer. But time was ticking, and there was very few races left to try to get a qualification to Worlds that year. So I saw that there was a race in Elsinore in Denmark in the middle of June. And so finally got back running the first week in June. But when I say back running, like a minute on, minute off kind of thing, into a 10-minute run. And I had to enter this race, or else what was the point of having done all that biking and swimming training and not have the opportunity to try to get to Worlds? So anyway, entered the race in Elsinore in Denmark. And I think at that stage I was a week back running, certainly nowhere near a half marathon. So I just blitzed the swim, went all guns blazing on the bike. And oh man, I was dying on that run. But I figured I'd be dying anyway, because I have no like running in my legs in the last 4 to 5 months, and that paid off. So it's funny, I tried different tactics in different races. So I ended up winning that race, getting my qualification to Worlds. And it's from then, I always have in the back of my head. And it was always something my coach had said to me when I was a rookie triathlete. He'd written on my training peaks once, the bike, the bike, the bike, the bike, the bike, the bike, the bike. And I still hold that to this day. You can be the best runner and the best swimmer, but if you're doing long distance sport, you have to be an incredible biker, and that makes you a better runner. Because if you throw down really good power on the bike, you get onto the run, you're way more efficient because you're not totally exhausted. Your legs are used to that, So even in Elsinore, like I didn't run that fast. I ran 4:20 somethings, which is not good enough to normally win a race. But I'd raced hard enough on the bike to balance it out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people have said to me as well, and a lot of guys have done, we've had guys on done 15, 16, 17 Ironman, and they all say cycling will supplement running, but running will never supplement your cycle. And it was
100%.
something that made so much sense to me when I did the 16 weeks. I was like, I'm doing a lot of cycling here, but my running, well, look, I'm not competing on your level. We got to the start line hoping, I was asking Sean, not for splits, I was wondering if there was anyone still at the finish line by the time I was going around. Is there anyone still there, Sean? Yeah, there's about 10 there. Keep going. Okay, thanks, Sean.
I was feeling so bad that I was bad support. Like I never gave him a split or not once. I just saw him like, you're still on the bike, Eric. Keep going.
If he had to give me a super split, I would have been happier. But he was on a scooter just shouting at me. But Becky, when you went you came off that was the first time I had actually seen you race, was in Lahti in Finland at the World Championships. So coming off that, then obviously a World Championship is the best of the best. It's the top 5, 6, the race from every race around the world that are showing up. And I know we talk about cycling is there, but the World Championships, there's no real hiding. So how were you going into that race knowing you hadn't got the early kind of couple of months running in, or was this the start of the recovery?
Thankfully, so Elsinore, the first race in Elsinore was at the beginning of June, I think, around that time. And I kind of raced myself into that race. So I entered the European Champs in Tallinn as well, to try to get a little bit of confidence back, I think, with my run, and to learn how to balance it instead of going like pedal to the metal on the bike, learning how to balance it out, because I didn't have the months of running in my legs. And so that gave me confidence for Lahti, because I was about 10 or 11 seconds quicker per kilometer in that run. And that was only 3 weeks after Denmark. So thankfully I was like, okay, all my years of running, like the bank is there. Like you've sown that seed way earlier in your career that you're okay. And then I had another 3 weeks to Lahti. So I figured if I took 11 seconds off per kilometer in 3 weeks, I could take another 11 seconds off going to Lahti. So I was probably a bit bullish going into it, and I planned to run 4-minute kilometers. So yeah, I think that the Estonian race definitely gave me the confidence I needed. But again, going into Lahti, I definitely wanted to get top 3, but being in the older age group, I didn't know any of my competition, and I didn't know what to expect. And I'm just going to throw myself at it. Even if you know your competition, it's not like the pro scene where you're all starting at the same time. It's a rolling start. So essentially, you are time trialing against yourself and going as hard as you can go in that race. And that race was, it was a little bit opposite, I suppose, to what I like. The bike course was rolling, but it wasn't hilly, and it wasn't rolling enough, I felt. And it was a bit flat, and I wouldn't have that kind of innate power in my legs. I'm definitely a more climbing type of athlete, but the run was right up my street, and it was just hills, hills, and hills. So I suppose the organizers couldn't have both a hilly bike and a hilly run. So once again, it was a measured course, and I don't know how, but I clawed my way back in that run, having not done that much running. So I ended up finishing second in that race. That wasn't as sweet though as finishing second in Utah. Like I was happy, and it was like I felt like I'd given my absolute best performance. I ran 4:04s, so much better than what I'd done in the other 2 races, having not ran very much all year. So delighted with that. Knew I couldn't do any more, but I'd lost by 19 seconds. And I was like, that's a hard pill to swallow. Once again, in the moment, absolutely delighted. In the aftermath, I was like, I've got to do one more of these world champs. I just have to. I'm going to have to go to New Zealand. And I remember my mom's friend who I'd be extremely fond of. She'd always be keeping up with how I'm doing. And she rang my mum and she was like, but Becky should have won. And my mum was like, no, she came second. And my friend's mum was like, well, my mum's friend was like, well, if you add up the bike, the swim and the run, she won. And my mum was like, oh, there's something called transitions. So then I realized, thanks to her, that my transition sucked and that I'd actually lost. I guess I essentially lost the race in the time in transition. So I decided then when 2024 kicked off that I was going to improve my transition. So that was my focus for last year. And I decided to do my first national series season. So do the domestic league in Ireland that I hadn't done since 2019, because I needed the shorter races like the sprints and the Olympics where you were under pressure in those transitions. And oh boy, did I come across some feisty women who were just amazing at transitions. You had Aisling Wire on the podcast before, and this other girl called Deirdre Casey. And I mean, they were just speed demons. And they really helped me realize that I wasn't up to scratch with how quick I hopped on my bike, how quick I was taking off my wetsuit. So it was a really good experience to learn that, to have your goal at the start of the year, to go to these races. And so my goal necessarily wasn't, I obviously wanted to win the races, but I was so focused on how can I improve the bits in between the swimming, biking and running. And that really, really paid off. I remember one Wednesday, I went out to the field across the way and I just practice hopping onto the bike like the proper way, not like the way I do it when I get to the 70.3 scene. And so I was like, okay, this is the weekend. 2 provinces was coming up, a sprint distance race. I was like, this is the weekend. I'm going to hop on the bike like everybody else hops on the bike instead of running on with my cleats on, Anyway,
and then stopping, getting on, doing the wiggle, and then off you go.
Look, it works very well, and I shouldn't have changed it because I got out of the water with the top 4 girls, and I was like, oh, this is great. I'm already at the front, And I was like, but you said to yourself you were going to do this, and plus I'd already put my cleats on the bike. Anyway, man, I screwed it up so bad. I had to throw the bike on the ground, and this is what I mean. So people think like you're really professional, but we all have these moments of absolute like terribleness. Threw my bike on the ground, had to yank my cleats off. This was after trying to hop on about 5 times and having missed the cleats. Anyway, lost about 2 minutes in that fiasco. Ended up putting the shoes on manually, hopping on the bike like I typically would, and then I was like, I just went on one and I was like, oh boy, you can't lose this race because you wanted to see if you could do the transitions properly, So anyway, ever since that day, I gave up on doing that. I gave up. I went back to my old ways, but now I do them faster. So I learned a lot from the domestic scene here. It was great to have the opportunity to do it.
What's the proper way?
John's just catching up. John's sitting there with a helmet on going, what? What's happening?
The cleats are on the bike, but you slip into them and then tie them as you're cycling.
Yeah, you jump on the bike. You jump on the bike and kind of when you're sitting down, you want your 2 feet to go in simultaneously, and you have the straps really wide open, and they're held on with elastic bands. But
Power Ranger change or something. That's bananas.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you, Sean.
It's
not for the faint-hearted.
No, I need Aisling back to the podcast to talk about that one. What happened there?
it's definitely high risk, high reward. But if you
have you tried it, Eric? You must have tried it, Eric.
No, I tried it. I tried it once, and I nearly killed myself. That was the end of it. I was like, first of all, I'm not fast enough to even bother with them 10 seconds. So it's just I was losing races by 19 hours. Never mind 19 seconds. So it's look, it's. For me, the enjoyment, but when you're looking for the 1%, it's some people don't put on socks going for the run because they're after saving 4 or 5. One of the reels I watched the other day was, oh my God, he didn't put his socks on. Could this be a genius move? I was like, oh my God.
In fairness, I didn't put socks on for any race in Ireland and I have scars to this day after you just get the biggest blisters.
Yeah.
But you just look, when you're doing the sprints in the Olympics, you can't wear socks. If you put on socks, it's just a no-go. So I'd rather have the blister, and yeah, than make that rookie move. I'd make enough rookie moves still.
Be putting on the socks, I'll be putting on the Emirates, the works.
Sean's after taking off. He's one sock on his ear, a helmet on. He doesn't know what's going on.
Oh, I've never taken up triathlon. In fact, that. Obviously, 2024 is a big year for you. Before we get into the big races, a race that Eric has done, he called one of the toughest races he's ever done, the Lost Sheep, the Irish Middle Distance Championships. This could be something where someone listening goes, I want to get into triathlons. I want to try a good, hard, tough race this year. This is up there, right? Or is this just a walk in the park for you because you love hills?
Well, it's all relative because you're going to push yourself harder, right?
True.
Hardest race I've ever done. And you know what? I'm going to include the World Championships in there. The Lost Sheep course is relentless. But because of that, it is up there with one of my favorite races, because you can't go slow. If you go slow, you're going backwards. You're going down the hill. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's really the only race out there that I've experienced that has a super hilly bike course, so like big climbs that I just don't get the experience of doing them in Dublin. And then really hilly run course as well. Normally it's one or the other, And I mean, you're starting.
It's even beyond a hilly run course. It's like it's a mountain course. Like, it's ridiculous. You're saying it like it's a couple. It's not like you're running up to Pope's Cross. You're climbing a fucking mountain when you're running. It nearly killed me, Becky. It nearly my first middle distance, and I swore I was packing it in. I sold my bike halfway down that course.
I don't remember all the races we did over the years, but I remember Eric going up the hills and stuff on that bike. I specifically remember the videos of that. Man, he wasn't going up like you were going up them anyway, Becky. That man was dying. Like he turned Catholic after that. He met God in those hills going up there.
But it is, and it's just to highlight to people in terms of races in Ireland, and we talk about facilities, and we talk about some countries have best tracks, best pools, best this, but in terms of some of the races in Ireland, I would say that if 70.3, it's slightly less in terms of kilometers, but it's probably one of the top 10 hardest in Europe, I would say.
I 100% agree with you. I actually like, out of all the races I've done, all the 70.3s that I've traveled to, nothing actually compares with the elevation on both. And I suppose this year, or 2024, throw in a really hot day within the mix. Now in Ireland, I suppose we would take that over the crazy gusts you could potentially have. So I think we got a really good day for it. But I think if you've completed the Lost Sheep, there should be no hesitation with entering any race on the international scene or the domestic scene if you've accomplished that race. Take it. I know the bike course is like 82 kilometers, but actually my time that I got wouldn't have beaten my 70.3 times. And I think that goes to show the extent of the elevation culminated with the running elevation as well, So yeah, well done, Eric, for completing it.
Yeah, I survived it. I wouldn't say I completed it. I nearly died. It was something else. It was but look, it was one of those that had to be done. I think I slept in a van the night before and all sorts.
Boy.
But it was a good experience. But no, what I will say is I was training for. I gave myself 16 weeks for an Ironman, and this was my 6 weeks to go. Kind of see how you're fixed. I wasn't fixed, Becky. Needless to say. But in terms of confidence, like you said, I was going on to take on twice the distance, but half the elevation. And I was like, do you know what? If I can survive this, I know I can survive the other one, because and I have to say, and I'll agree with you, as much as I hurt for every part of it, I enjoyed how much I hurt. I deserved every bit of it. So to see athletes like you guys, when people like me are just probably coming back off the bike course, you are pretty much finishing the half marathon. It's so impressive to see how you guys climb at the speeds you climb, and how you guys run as fast as you run up and down these hills. It's absolutely amazing. And I suppose that's why we get so confused when people listen to our podcast, because we're looking at athletes like you guys going, how are they doing this? Like, this is phenomenal. But it's a testament to the Irish triathlon scene as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. That's lovely to hear. I suppose it's this year or 2024, it wasn't just a race. It was given the title of being the national championship. So when you have the opportunity to win an Irish national title, you're not going into that race without having weeks and weeks of training behind you. So while I was doing the domestic national series season, my end goal was always within the Irish League, winning the middle distance Irish national champs. So I went there and it was game on. Like I was ready for action. And like you said, you know you're going to hurt, but it's almost when you get, once I get to that stage of hurting and just over it, that's my happy point. Getting kind of building to that stage where you know it's going to be painful. You know your heart rate's going through the roof. You know your lungs are busting. It's sometimes when you get over the cliff a little bit with that, you almost become comfortable in the pain. And that's when you can really settle into your race. And I'm glad I felt that way, because it's almost how you had to be, knowing that when you got off that bike course, I had no clue what was facing me. I just heard it was a hard run course. And boy, when I started those hills, like it's not for the faint-hearted. And I suppose for me, I was still trying to hit my splits. Like I knew what I wanted to do from a 21K perspective. And it was less of that and more trying to be a little bit more strategic and running hard up hills, recovering on the downhills. Thankfully, it was an out and back course for the first about 11K, I think. So I got to see where my competition were. And that gave me then a little bit more of a spurt. I suppose for me, finishing a race with the run to this day is still my absolute favorite part of a race. And finishing it knowing it's hard to know if it's my strength with the bike, but I think it's still my strength. Knowing that you get to finish a race on your strength is very, very fun. And yeah, I was able to, I suppose, I had nice months of running behind me at this stage. So I was able to tackle that running course better than I thought I'd be able to.
What does it mean for competitors now running and I've got a 2-minute lead? Does that play, and I'm not saying it in a way, I know you guys, you all compete well, but in the mental side, and there is a big mental side to racing. You obviously reap the benefits going, now I'm in my world. How do you think that affects others in the racing scene when they're like, oh no, I've only got so much of a lead, or what does that mean for you? And forget about other athletes on the bike going, oh no, I'm racing against Sean and I know he's going to put in X amount on the bike. What does it mean for you in the psychology, and especially coming into that last leg?
That's a really good question, actually. And I suppose I suppose talk about myself first, even though I know the run is my strength, I always want to get off the bike in first place, because you don't know how things are going to go down. When you're in long distance sport, there's I suppose the nutrition side, and your nutrition strategy is massive. So for me, I always want to be in, if I feel if I get off the bike first, I'm in a safe place almost, because I've got confidence behind my run. If I saw, and I suppose this has happened to me, where I've got in the Worlds, I got off the bike with somebody having quite a significant lead on me starting the run. And I know for me, what works the best is forget about that person, because the race is so long that if you try to go beyond what your training has mimicked in races, what your training has led you up to be able to do, you're going to have a worse race than where you are at the moment, and they'll get further ahead of you. So to me, it's always back yourself and back your race plan that you had. Do react. You're going to have to react to things in the race, but don't change anything significantly that you're going to throw your own race under the bus. And I think if other girls saw that I had a bit of a lead, you can always wish that something happens to the person in front of you, but you just have to have
that's my technique.
You have 2 tails in front of you, Eric, you mean?
I think subconsciously that's always in the front of your head. will they bonk? Have they gone too hard? But no, you have to back yourself, and the races are so long that keep with your plan And I think if you keep with your plan, you're going to get out of the race what you deserve. And if that person's a little bit far ahead of you, in my eyes, they've probably put in the training to be ahead of me. That's if I get beat, that's always what I think. And then I'm like trying to double down on my training so they'll never beat me again, you know? But yeah, it's just to, you can only do you know how much hard work you've put in. And if you put in the work, you can back yourself in your race plan.
You had a great season this season, and then that brought you, obviously, racing into races tends to be a good thing for athletes. It tends to keep you race sharp. It keep you, I suppose, more reactive, more seeing the competition, more in the zone. Your fitness, you tend to be peaking. Coming in then to a December race for the World Championships in New Zealand, how did you manage that come the end of the season into kind of a 2 month, 2.5 month off period?
Yeah, it was. So I had 12 weeks after I finished the Irish season and doing the Europe, doing some international races. And funny, Eric, I was actually really happy. I'd been racing, like I raced every single weekend in the month of July. I'd raced internationally, and then the long distance races in August. I had another national champs and another race in September. I love, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love racing. Any opportunity I'll take. But I was so excited to just get down. We took a kind of a week off, a kind of unstructured training, and then we had 11 weeks to build into the race. I didn't want any disruptions. If you race too much sometimes, you're training, like I missed a lot of my long distance bikes, for instance, training every weekend. So for me, I felt I had enough race experience, and I was just so excited to throw down 11 weeks of hardcore training. I didn't do a single race. And sometimes I know with me, I know some athletes love to race into races, and that's one approach. And I do like that. But from my past experience, even as a runner, I've nearly always PB'd in the first race of my season. And that's me being a track athlete. My best race is always the first race. So I just kind of had that in the back of my head, knowing that I wouldn't get any races leading up to New Zealand. And I was really, really cool with that because I was so confident in the training my coach had kind of guided me through in the weeks leading up. Like we did about 3 or 4 weeks of VO2 max, no disruptions, leading into 3 or 4 weeks of threshold, no disruptions. And then 3 weeks of real race specific stuff where we started more brick sessions. And I everything just went smoothly because you don't have to taper into a race, and then you don't have to recover out of a race. So there's 2 approaches that you can take, and have an experience of that approach. I was happy enough to do it, and not know exactly where my training would lead me going into New Zealand. But sure, sometimes that's the fun of racing. There's very little surprises left in life. And sometimes being on that start line, wondering, gosh, I hope the training has worked, is a kind of a surprise. It's fun. And you getting to race the race is unwrapping that present to see how it's all gone, you know?
Becky, this is coming into your third World Championships. The first one, Utah, hoping to get top 10. By all accounts, exceeded expectations. The second year, had you decided not to put socks on, who knows what could have happened. But also second, and someone who doesn't, for example, myself, might know the difference between AG that year and the year before, where the change in the groups goes, where you came second. And you came second. So when you're talking to people coming up to New Zealand, there will be some people, whether they said it or not, may have the expectation of, well, is Becky was going to break it this time and get that win. That's pressure, right? Is that pressure, or is that just, how were you feeling coming into it then? Were you feeling the pressure of that this could be the time to win and it meant first or nothing?
Um, yeah, I definitely wanted to win. I won't lie about that. And I'd say it was probably a little bit more expectation than pressure. I have to admit, I'm really cool under pressure. I like, once again, having that background of sport, I always seem to do better on the bigger occasion. So pressure doesn't make me nervous, and I don't let other things get in my way, in my way. So I think there was definitely expectation. I even think my parents were like, about, I don't know, it's about 5 or 6 weeks out. They said to me, look, it's gonna be just such a fantastic experience. Don't, and it's not about how you do. And I actually just said to them, I was in such a good place, and I was like, Mom, do you know what? I think I'm gonna win. And she was like, really? And I was like, I know I still have quite a bit of more training to do, but I just felt, I don't know, I felt strong at that stage. And then, so to me, I was almost, for me, it was definitely winning or coming third. I did not want to come second again. And definitely, yeah, I think that would have been worse. I'd rather be third by loads than come second. So, and once again, like, I'm an amateur athlete. There is no real pressure on you as an amateur. But I really, yeah, I just knew how much hard work I'd put in during the summer racing. But those 12 weeks, like, they were heavy duty. And my coach had kind of given me a bit of free rein on the bike outside of the sessions. And so for me, that meant any single free time I had to be on the bike, you know? So the hours definitely ramped up in those 12 weeks that I kind of gave myself, it was like a positive expectation. There was no negativity, there's no negative connotation around it. I was super stoked to see if I could win. And I really didn't think of any other outcome, except if I came second, that would really suck. But I probably would just explain to people that I'm cool with that. Do you know what I mean?
Just like being the second best sister or twin. Yeah, look, you're used to it, Becky.
Why did I say that?
I'm always waiting for it.
Obviously, it's different going down to the last sheep, where you're probably going down the morning or the night before. You're getting New Zealand. You're probably getting there a couple of days early, I'm assuming, and probably cycling the roads and all the rest. Between that point, getting to New Zealand and getting to the starting line, still that positive attitude. I have to win. No doubts creeping in. It's just you feeling good and getting to that start. Once again, we talk about the atmosphere that only an Ironman can bring. It's all positive thinking, and now it's your time to get number one, or any doubts creeping.
Well, there's always doubts when I've never raced the Aussies and the Kiwis. Like, so I would have known my American competition, I would have known my European competition, but I did not have a clue what females I was going to be facing against. So yeah, there's always doubts. Like, it's like, positivity doesn't mean your confidence is through the roof. But I was feeling really good. Training was going super well. The race was on the Saturday, and on Wednesday, actually, we had to check in and register, and I wasn't feeling 100%. And we were staying about 50 minutes away from where the race actually was, so it was a lovely quiet part to stay away from the crazy vibes that were going on down in Taupo. And so yeah, I found myself sleeping a lot on the car journey the way home. And the next morning, Thursday morning, I woke up actually with 2 massive swollen glands. And I was like, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. But I kind of ignored it, did a run workout, and it was the last workout, and it went really, really well. So I was like, okay, you're good. Just sleep for the rest of the day. There's nothing else on the cards. So I slept it off. And then the next morning, on the Friday morning, I had a bike workout, kind of race simulation stuff, a bit of a run to do, and a bit of a swim if I wanted to. And thankfully, it had gone down to 1 swollen gland. And I was like, okay, so sleep works. Like that, it's gone from 2 to 1. And then, sure, who do you ring when you're kind of in a period of worry? I was like, Mom,
Mommy,
I've got a swollen gland.
Black 7-Up and you be grand.
I didn't tell a single other soul, because I didn't want it to be a thing. I think if you tell other people, it becomes, oh, I'm getting ill. And so I said to my mom, she's a nurse, or she's retired now, but she's the nursing background. And so she just gave me a couple of tips. And what your mom says is like gold dust. So I was like, okay, if my mom says to do this, and then I'm going to be better, this is going to work. So I skipped the run, skipped the swim, and just did the bike workout. And once again, felt okay. So all was still good. But I suppose it was the first time waking up on the morning of a race where I definitely doubted things a little bit. And I was just wondering, gosh, I hope I've never had that before. So I was like, gosh, is this going to take anything out of me? Definitely didn't let it get in my way. But it was the first time, I think, normally I'll get to the morning of the race, and any doubts I had creeping in the week, they're definitely put to one side because it's all race focused. Whereas it was the first time I was just a little bit nervous because there was something uncontrollable happening. And I don't like not being in control of everything on a race morning, you know. So that threw a little bit of a spanner in the works. And I started the swim, and I decided for the first time ever that I was going to put myself in the first row. So you go off in rows of 8. So say if there's 300 in my age category, I wanted to be in that first off when the gun went, because I figured the other 7 girls they must be pretty confident in their ability to swim fast, putting themselves up well. And I knew I just wanted to get on one person's feet. If I could get on one person's feet, I trusted that if they put themselves first, they're going to be fast. So once again, thankfully, it stopped me thinking about anything else. So it stopped me thinking about, oh my goodness, is this swollen gland going to do any harm to me in the race? And once I hit that water, it was game on, and I was chasing feet, not letting feet go. And it's funny, everything else goes out of your head, and you're just so focused on what's happening. So yeah, so there was definitely doubt, but thankfully, when the gun goes off, the adrenaline is soaring at that stage.
So obviously, look, the rolling start plays a big factor in it, and it adds to history. But getting out of the water, how does that feel then when you're looking around? You get to meet the person whose feet you've been tickling for the last 1900 meters or whatever it is. But how does that feel then when you and those 7 or maybe some good swimmers from behind you catch up, pass you out? How does it feel then to be seeing them on the bike and trying to chase down or as you said, be the first off the bike? Was that still the plan?
Whenever I get out of the water, Eric, I am absolutely buzzing. That's the only part of the race where I just don't love. When I get my feet on dry land, it's really race on. I mean, any girls that might have got ahead of me in the swim, I am chasing them down in transition, especially this year or 2024. That was my goal, to do a fast transition. So I think I got out. Was I sick? I think I can't remember where I was in the swim. I'm sure you know. But the girl's feet I was on, I was like, thank you very much. See you later. Passed her. got my kit bag, quickly took a gel, put my cleats on. It was like I was in a running race. I was just pegging it to my bike. And then the minute I get to the bike, I'm just in my happy place. And especially in Taupo, the first kind of third of the race was extremely hilly. And I was like, sweet, let's go. And going up the hills, I was actually like to other girls, good job, you're doing great, because I was in such a great mood. I was, you don't do that in a world champs race, but that's
respectfully,
the kind of
everyone's trying to spit in you and everything. What are you saying? You're doing a great job.
That's why I said over, yeah.
But I suppose the start's always fun because because there's waves that have gone ahead of you. There's lots of kind of back markers from the other age categories that you're passing out. So for the first half of the race, I had tons of people that I was like, cool, I'll get her, then I'll get her, and then I'll get her. But you've no idea if these girls are in your age category. Yeah, like you're not going to stare at their number on their back to try to get a glimpse in the tiny writing if they're in the 35 to 39 age category. And actually in Taupo, I actually don't even think they were on the numbers. So I was in the 700s. So then I presumed maybe the girls that I'm racing against are in the 700s. But every person I passed out was like 100 or 300, something like that. So you are completely in the blue. You have not a clue how you're doing. So it's all about you and your power and your race strategy and how hard you can go. So it got to the second half of the race and I did not see a soul. There wasn't a person on the side of the road. The only people you saw were at the water stations. And I never stop at water stations on the bike because I don't want to slow down. So yeah, it was like, in a sense, it was relaxing, but in a way I was like, oh my God, where am I coming? How am I doing? So it's a little bit off-putting, but over in Taupo, it's all that chip seal on the road. And like in the last 30K, the beautiful course, but that chip seal does wear your legs out, especially me being quite a light athlete. I'm not a power athlete. So yeah, it was like my bike was shaking. The power actually just it flatlined at stages because I have the power on my cranks. So at stages, I didn't even know what power I was doing. So I really just had to kind of tune in to how I felt. And with about 25K to go with a headwind coming at me, I just decided, I was like, this is ripping your legs apart. And you have to now go 21K in the heat that day was blistering. And down in New Zealand, they always say there's a hole in the ozone layer. So whatever that temperature is, like you can add on another 10 degrees to that. And that's really how it is. So I was trying to do all these calculations in my head. And I just decided, I backed myself a little bit. And I said, bring the bike back a little bit. Maybe for the last 25K, kind of pedal at the lower end of the prescribed power my coach gave me versus always do what I'm used to doing. And I'm always trying to do about 10 to 20 watts above the power that I'm given. And I'd never done that before. And I was like, oh boy, like I just can't wait to get off the bike to see. I was kind of done with the bike. I was all because I was so lonely. And I was always like, I was also like, how am I doing? Anyway, that's when the news came in. So gave my bike to the bike catcher, put on my running shoes, and then my partner was standing there, and I'd asked him to use the terminology plus and minus, just because sometimes you don't hear it with all the roaring. Like at World Champs, the crowds are massive. So I just wanted to make sure I was catching what he was saying. And so I just heard a minus, and I was like, okay, that's all right. And he was like, minus 530. And I was like, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. Did I really slow down that much? But I'm quite a positive thinker when I'm in races. And I just like in that moment, I switched that around, and I was like, she's overbiked. She's gone too hard. And that's what I had to think to myself to make it possible that I could still win. And my coach we decided that I was going to try to do the first 10K in 40 minutes. So 4-minute Ks, so that I wouldn't go off too hard, which I always do. Obviously I went off too hard. And after 3K, once again, my partner's incredible. He was like, you've already put 45 seconds into her. And that's when I was like, sweet, this is going to be a good day. I felt incredible. And I segment it into like 4 or 5Ks. And I always check in with myself. So after 5K, and I was running 3 somethings at this stage, 350s maybe. And I was like, you're still feeling okay. And at 10K, I was like, whoa, you're still doing pretty okay. And there was this part in the race that was just absolutely beautiful in the first lap. And when I started getting tired in the second lap, I was like to myself, you still have that amazing, beautiful part coming up. You're absolutely fine. So it was good to have that. But it got to the stage where I really wanted to know where I was. My partner was like, forget about third. Like, you're grand. And I was like, how much do I have until I can catch number 1? And I don't know what he said, but he said she's wearing white and she's got a black sleeve. So there was about 9K left in the race, and I went on the hunt. I was like, no, it's not her. It's not her. And so you forget about how tired you are. Your watch, that went out the window. And I was just kind of like, where is this girl? And I finally saw her with about 5K to go. And that's when you have to get strategic, because she obviously was told what I look like, because third, I think at this stage, third was about 10 minutes behind. So it was a race for first. And
sorry to cut you off here, but did you know at this stage that would you start at the same line? So did you know when you're catching or not catching that? Did you have to pass, just for context for people listening, because the rolling starts, did you know you had to pass and get a good bit ahead, or did you know if she started after you? Did you have any idea at this stage what was going on that way, and were you thinking about it?
So this is where it gets interesting. So I didn't have a clue about that. So this is where it got fun. So all I saw, and I wasn't told anything about that by the people supporting me, kind of my crew that I had on the course. So all I was told was to catch her, and she was this far ahead. So I saw her in the distance, and I actually was a bit strategic about it. I slowed myself down so that when I went back past her, I blasted by her. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep this up. But I was like, you got to do it. And so after I got by her, there's about 4K left. And that's the kind of the last 4K of each 10K is the big hill. And thankfully, you can hear a bit more when you're on the hill because you're not running as fast. So I got up the hill, still ahead of her, about 3K to go. And one of my buddies who was racing the next day, Lachlan Campion, he just said to me, so I thought at that stage, look, I'm winning. I'm good. But he said, you have to keep going. You have to throw it down. These last 3K are the most important 3K of your life. And I was like, oh shit. Like, that's when I copped rolling start. She must have started behind me. So I never slowed down in that race. Because at that stage then, you don't have a clue how much seconds you need to build on her. So I passed her out, but I didn't know, did I need 5 seconds, a minute? Did I need 3 minutes? So I actually finished that race as fast as I started. So I started in a 340, finished in the 340 and crossed the line. And I thought I'd won, but you still wanted total clarification that you'd won. And one of the officials said, you won by 51 seconds. And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So when I passed her, so I needed to get, I forget exactly what it was, but she actually started well behind me in the swim. And she had a really fantastic swim. I suppose the more feet you're on, the the less, like, we definitely went off. We lost sight a little bit. The sun was really coming down. So we definitely went off course. So our swim was probably a little bit slower than actually how fast we were swimming. We were swimming quite fast, but definitely did extra distance. And I'd say she probably chose the better option to go a little bit further back. So you're following a crew of people, and the sun coming down that early in that morning didn't kind of cause havoc, you know? So yeah, those rolling starts, oh boy, it's the one thing I hate about amateur racing. But man, it made it exciting. And even my family were like, you do this to us every year. Can you not just have an easy race? You know what I mean? And I was like, where would the fun of that be? So yeah, that made it super awesome, because I think then third place was about 12 minutes behind. So coming second, really, that wouldn't have done it for me. That
especially after 2 previous years.
Yeah.
But that feeling of crossing the line ahead of the person, you think a second, but you don't know whether to go, yes, I did it. Only look back at that race photo, go, fuck, it looks like I won it, and I ended up coming second. Like, so that's a mad feeling to have.
Do you know what? You're going to put your arms out anyway, because like, you give the level of training that you put in leading up to a World Champs, and then just doing as best as you can do on the day. My arms are going to go out for that. Do you know, you'll never finish a World Champs. I've never finished a World Champs going, God, I wish I had done this. Thankfully, I've never experienced that feeling. So yeah, no matter what, the arms are going out, because I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I got to this point, training the whole year to the 14th of December. Like, you don't often do that. So to me, getting there injury-free, being healthy, is kind of a win in itself. And that's why my arms went out. But then to find out that I definitely won for sure, oh man, I was just so happy afterwards. It was unbelievable.
Becky, horrible question coming up, because you are world champion. It's an obvious question that's coming up that everyone's thinking, but I just don't like asking it. Like last year, the European champions get there. This year, Lost Sheep, Irish national champion, world champion. How do you top that? Like, looking into 2025, like what is next is the short version of doing it. But when you hit that high that you, like you said earlier, second just would not do this year. Like, that means then the next year does first not do? It has to be first. Like, what is next, and how do you feel coming into the 2025 season?
Yeah, do you know what? Everybody keeps asking me that question. And at the moment, like, I'm training my butt off, and I haven't haven't fully decided yet what I want to do. The world, like, defending your world title would be great. I was third overall, so I didn't win the overall amateur category. A little bit out of your control, I guess, because different conditions with athletes starting an hour and a half after you. So in the back of my head, I'd still love to be overall amateur champ is one thing going through my head. Another thing going through my head is I've mentioned that I'm still absolutely in love with running as a sport in itself. And I'd love to get, I suppose, get my half marathon time down to a pretty respectable time, with the goal to do a really fast marathon in time. Once again, I've got different goals, whether it's with triathlon, whether it's running, whether it's to take out a pro license. I'm not rushing myself into making a decision. Definitely want to continue at a high level and get faster in each discipline. But I'm a bit conflicted whether, do I want to go down the marathon route? Do I want to stick with the middle distance triathlon? I have the Irish record for the Ironman in my head, which I think would be a really nice goal to have. So lots of different things, lots of juices are flowing still, and sitting down with my coach in 2 weeks to put the plan in place and make finally, I think time doesn't help decision making. Someone needs to just get it out of me.
Becky, I have to ask, what does respectful time mean to you for a half, considering I've got one time down here, and it's when you start talking about half marathons, if me and Eric says half marathons, we'll say 1 hour, and because there's a good bit of an and I just have 77 minutes down for you. You did for 1.5 back in 2023, and you're probably faster now. What's a respectful time? And go easy on me and Eric when you say the answer to that question.
You know what? I've been a little bit out of the running scene to really know what I can get, what is a really good time. But I'd love to get, I suppose, around the 74 mark this year if I can, with the goal to get it to 72. And then I think if you're around the 72 mark, you can run a really hard marathon off that. And I don't just want to, I suppose, I wish I could leave this competitive kind of spirit behind a little bit and just go and enjoy something. But I enjoy it more if I can go really well in a race.
Aim for something.
Yeah, if I can aim for something. So I've always looked at Dublin Marathon. Like I think Dublin Marathon, it would always be my first marathon if I ever did one, and I'd absolutely love to go and do it and try to make a podium. But like this year, you have to be down in the 2:35, 2:36 to make the podium. So that's where my head goes. So I know then if I need to get there, then I need to get my marathon time, my half down to about a 72, 73, you know? So yeah, look, I'm sure it's all achievable in time as long as you stay injury free and healthy. But that's definitely the hard part. And I have to admit, I'd never ever give up the biking and the swimming if I ever did in years to come, even go down the marathon route, because I just that element of cross training. Like I only run 3 times a week, but I do a lot of biking and a lot of swimming, and I'm running the fastest I ever have. So there's a lot to be said for, I suppose, what people call cross training. And I know Georgia Bell, who's a prolific 1,500-meter runner, just won the Millrose Games there, was 3rd in the Olympic 1,500. She came from a duathlon background, and she still does her long bike every Sunday, you know? So that's why I feel like I can take my time making the decision. All this training is actually going in the right direction anyway. And sure, I've got a fantastic coach that's helped me to 2 seconds and a goal at a world champs level. So I'm sure he'll help guide me in the right direction.
Unbelievable. I'm just taking notes as Eric asks this question. Get on bike more.
And look, if your coach doesn't figure it out, we've Barcelona marathon this year. We're probably going to have another one next year, Becky. We'll bring you for a PB in a marathon. Don't worry about it. We have a unique.
Hey, I'm all up for the crack as well.
Set of skills of bringing people on holidays. There'll definitely be no pressure at our one, but it's no, look, it's amazing. And I suppose to be in a position to have the choice of where it is a double-edged sword. It's really hard to know, and it's the world is your oyster, I suppose, but it's absolutely phenomenal to have got to interview such a fantastic athlete and someone who still has so much to give in whatever sport or whatever avenue she's going down. Becky, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the podcast. You are always welcome on our marathon trips. Don't mind what Sean says. We'll embarrass him. It's been absolutely brilliant. And thanks for giving us some time out of a very busy training schedule just to tell us a little bit about what it's like in the world of triathlon and being a world champion.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. The time has gone by so fast. There's been so much crack. You guys are gas.
We can't end any better than that. So on that note, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. And myself, Becky, and Eric, take care.